crippling kicks versus hands of stone, and cemetery high kick knockouts versus the left hook from hell, Cro Cop and Poatan are two of the scariest knockout artists in combat sports history. These striking maestros won belts in the most prestigious kickboxing and MMA organizations, and are both responsible for some of the most vicious, jaw-dropping knockouts these sports have ever seen. But the real question is, how is the superior striker, and how would a hypothetical battle between these legends go if they fought each other in their primes? Let's recall how they played with their enemies' lives on their way to the top of the kickboxing and MMA food chain, and settle once and for all who the real knockout king is between the two. To better understand who the better knockout artist or striker might be overall, we will examine their most memorable knockouts in both kickboxing and MMA to determine who stands at the top of this hierarchy. Although they come from different eras, and comparing their styles is like debating who would win in a fight between a T-Rex and a Spinosaurus, Mirko and Alex share several key similarities that allow us to compare their abilities. Both began their careers as kickboxers, competing in the most elite organizations of their time. Cro Cop fought in K1, where he enjoyed a solid career, culminating in becoming the K1 World Grand Prix final champion in Zagreb. On the other hand, Alex Pereira is a two-division glory kickboxing champion, capturing belts in both the middleweight and light heavyweight divisions. Both Cro Cop and Poatan chose the more lucrative path of transitioning to MMA, with the Croatian winning the 2006 Pride Openweight Grand Prix, while Alex claimed the UFC middleweight and light heavyweight titles, much like in kickboxing. Another shared trait is their use of defensive grappling to keep the fight standing, allowing them to finish opponents on the feet. But the real question is, who did it better? Mirko's kickboxing debut wasn't a walk in the park, as he was matched against a future kickboxing legend, Jerome Labana. They fought for 5 whole rounds, and as the close encounter came to its conclusion, victory was awarded to Cro Cop. But the first memorable knockout the Croatian has scored was against Jan Norci, a 6'11" giant from South Africa with heavy hands. Being tall did not prevent Mirko from unloading an overhand bomb that sent the African on a blind date with the canvas. However, the first time Cro Cop introduced the world to his legendary high kick was against the Brit Ricky Nicholson. It wasn't even his stronger leg that landed on Ricky's head. Nevertheless, when the right high kick connected, it was GG, well played. The next K1 legend who got in the way was Mike Bernardo, a powerful slugger with notable victories over Andy Hug, Peter Arts, and Francisco Filho. The Croatian steered his victim into an ambush and pulled the trigger by utilizing his most deadly weapon, the left high kick. The wobbled opponent tried his best to stay in the fight, but the subsequent assault destroyed any hopes for a comeback. It was the first time Cro Cop showed the world what harm his left high kick could do, but sure as hell, it wasn't the last. In the K1 Grand Prix 1999 semi-finals, the Croatian knockout artist was set to lock horns with Sam Greco, one of the few ever to beat arguably the greatest kickboxer of all time, Ernesto Hoost. Mirko implemented an unconventional tactic, chopping the foe's legs like a tree. The adversary was down in agony, but who could have blamed him since he was getting his legs destroyed by the world's greatest kicker? The referee had no choice but to stop the torture seminar in the closing seconds of the second round. The Croatian lost in the final against Ernesto Hoost, but unleashed his anger for redemption on his next opponent, Hiromi Amada. It's worth mentioning that Mirko went to wars with the kickboxing royals Peter Aerts and Mark Hunt and won both those bouts. Then, on June 14, 2002, the Croatian was back in action against Remi Bonjarski, a future 3-time K1 World Grand Prix heavyweight. Little did anyone know that while Bonjarski was the future of kickboxing, Cro Cop was the present. Mirko started the hunting season with a left high kick that partially landed but hurt the foe nonetheless. The Croatian smelled blood and left the sledgehammers fly. The Dutchman survived the attack, but it could hardly be called a salvation, as Mirko had no intention of letting his prey off the hook. The foe started to freeze like a deer in the headlights, and the referee intervened to prevent Remy from spending the night in an emergency room. Despite Bonjasky being widely considered one of the greatest kickboxers of all time, Cro Cop made him look easy. It was evident that Mirko was on another level, as he made elite kickboxers look like amateurs. While many see Bob Sapp as a joke and a punching bag, let's not forget that in the early 2000s, he was a force to be reckoned with. But when Mirko landed his atomic left cross, the Incredible Hulk on steroids turned into a pussycat. This homicide happened in March of 2003 and was the point of his career when Cro Cop decided to leave kickboxing to focus on MMA entirely. However, the Croatian heavy-hitting maestro returned to the ring after almost a decade and nailed Loren Javier Jorge with an uppercut, before proceeding to dominate the K1 World Grand Prix final in Zagreb in 2013 and win the tournament in the final against Ismael Lont. Overall, Mirko's kickboxing career is nothing short of remarkable, but Alex Pereira has built his own skyscraper in this sport years after the Croatian. After dominating local events in Sao Paulo for 2 years, Alex Pereira's potential caught the eye of the global kickboxing scene, leading to his glory debut on March 8, 2014, against future UFC standout Dustin Jacoby. It didn't take long for Pereira to make his mark, introducing Jacoby to his signature weapon, the brutal left hook, which sent him on a hitchhike through the galaxy. What a debut for the future star. In the finals, Pereira faced Sahak Paparian, a former WFCA and It's Showtime world champion. Poatan dominated the fight to a unanimous decision, earning his first major title, the Glory Middleweight Contender Tournament. Fast forward to 2016, Pereira met his future nemesis, the Last Style Bender, at Glory of Heroes 1. In a close bout, Pereira's power shots edged out Style Bender's technical prowess, setting the stage for an inevitable rematch. In 2017, the two faced off again, and once more, Pereira's infamous left hook stole the show, knocking Style Bender out cold and marking his final kickboxing fight. Alex kept his momentum going, dismantling Burim Rama next and knocking out Macon Silva with a left hook so powerful it dropped Silva like a newborn deer. In October 2017, Pereira squared off against Simon Marcus for the Glory middleweight title. After a wild back-and-forth battle, the Brazilian started his sequence with a left hook that dropped the foe momentarily, and then went airborne with a knee, followed by a heavy cargo of bombs that left Marcus barely standing by the final bell. When it was all said and done, the judges had no headache deciding who was the winner and new Glory middleweight champion. In 2019, Pereira defended his title against Jason Wilness, the man who handed him his first pro loss. This time, Pereira flipped the script with a high kick missile and nailed him with a flying knee, avenging his loss in spectacular fashion. Later that year, he claimed the interim Glory light heavyweight title by knocking out Donegi Abena with, you guessed it, a merciless left hook that sent the adversary straight to the land of darkness. Pereira continued his reign with a first-round knockout of Ertugrul Bayrak, whose failure to avoid the atomic left hook ended his night just before the buzzer. This spectacular knockout gave him the opportunity to seize the light heavyweight crown that belonged to Artem Vakitov, one of the best pound-for-pound kickboxers on the planet. Outcome of this competitive clash was decided by the judges, who allowed the Brazilian to claim the light heavyweight belt. Although Alex lost the immediate rematch, it didn't even matter, as the UFC made him an offer he couldn't refuse. But hey, if you thought their kickboxing knockouts were pure gold, just wait and see Mirko's and Alex's most memorable moments in MMA. In 2001, Mirko decided to explore the uncharted waters of MMA. He went on a 4-fight winning streak before facing Heath Herring, a UFC vet and a slick finisher. The Croatian cooked Herring's liver in Hannibal Lecter's style and reigned with punishment from the top until the referee pulled him off. On August 10th, 2003, Mirko was back in action against Igor Vovchanchin, a battle-tested vet with crazy knockout power. Once again, the Croatian showed everyone that his left high kick is as deadly as a .44 Magnum shot, sending the opposition straight to oblivion. This hard-to-watch knockout was later recognized as the knockout of the year. When he faced Dos Caras Jr. next, Mirko prescribed him another dose of his sleeping medicine, which was enough to render the foe unconscious. The Croatian failed to win the interim Pride Heavyweight Championship against Nogueira, but he returned in fashion against Ron Waterman, who was clearly mixed for a soccer ball. The script did not differ much for Yoshihisa Yamamoto and Shungo Oyama, but the next opponent, Alexander Emelianenko, was the next worthy opponent who promised some resistance. Fedor's little brother initiated a brawl, which Cro Cop gladly accepted. However, the Croatian decided to seal the deal legally and delivered a ballistic missile through a left high kick, issuing his foe a one-way ticket straight to the Dead Sea. Cro Cop went on a hunt for legends. He stopped Josh Barnett in 46 seconds and deprived Kevin Randleman of oxygen. The next meal on the menu was Mark Coleman, a UFC legend known as the Godfather of ground and pound. Taking Mirko down turned harder than climbing Mount Everest in flip-flops. And when the Croatian started to land clean, it was game over for Coleman. Cro Cop then reminded Ibrahim Magomedov how fragile a human torso can be, and then went to war with arguably the greatest MMA fighter of all time, Fedor Emelianenko. Mirko fell short again in a fight widely considered a fight of the decade. On September 10th, 2006, the Croatian fighter advanced in the 2006 Pride Openweight Grand Prix semi-finals to face Vanderlei Silva, a scary brawler and a former middleweight Pride FC champion. A left straight from Mirko dropped the Brazilian. The Croatian jumped on the wounded prey, but Vanderlei proved tougher than a $3 steak. Well, his toughness could help him to a certain level, but not against Mirko's most potent weapon. Vanderlei spent most of the fight in the role of a punching bag, but then Cro Cop grabbed his gear and went on a hunt. He pressed his nuclear button and put the adversary out of his misery. This jaw-dropping knockout granted Mirko his golden ticket to the finals, where he again met the unlucky Josh Barnett. The whole spectacle lasted for 7 minutes and 32 seconds as Cro Cop was a pit bull on the floor, tearing his opponent apart with strikes until he surrendered. Mirko won the 2006 Pride Openweight Grand Prix, which at the time was the most prestigious heavyweight tournament in the world. Although this was Mirko's culminating point in his MMA career, it is worth mentioning that he had some memorable bouts during his UFC run, where he destroyed Eddie Sanchez and Mustafa Al-Turk in the first round. But his sweetest UFC victory arrived on April 11th, 2015 against Gabriel Gonzaga. Gonzaga prevented Cro Cop from achieving his UFC dream, and it was one of the hardest pills to swallow for the Croatian. Mirko landed a vicious elbow that wobbled the Brazilian. He then followed him to the ground and rained with punishment, forcing the referee to wave the fight off. At the later stage of his career, Cro Cop took part in the Ryzen World Grand Prix 2016, where he knocked out the likes of Muhammad Lawal, Baruta Kaido, and Amir Ali Akbari to win the tournament. It's undeniable that Mirko's best MMA days were in Pride FC, where he dismantled legends and ran through opposition like a tank over cars. However, what Mirko Cro Cop was in Pride FC is Alex Pereira in the UFC today. Alex Pereira went 3-1 on the local MMA scene before catching the UFC's attention, and when the call came, he didn't hesitate. His first test in the big leagues was Andreas Michailidis, a BJJ black belt with a 13-4 record. But in round 2, Alex skipped the warm-up and served the main course, a flying knee that ended the fight just 18 seconds in. Eager for another highlight reel finish, Alex Pereira was itching to get back into the octagon, and the next man to step up was Sean Strickland, an eventual champ with wins over Brendan Allen, Uriah Hall, and Jack Hermanson. In a curious move, Strickland opted to keep it strictly striking, avoiding his wrestling altogether, as if daring fate to a stand-up showdown. But Poatan bided his time, waiting to launch that signature nuke of a left hook when the right moment came. When it did, Pereira's left hand struck like a missile, obliterating any hope Strickland had of turning things around. As the only man on the UFC roster to knock out reigning champion Izzy, it was inevitable that Alex Pereira and the last style bender would collide again for an epic rematch. On November 12, 2022, the stage was set and the UFC middleweight title was up for grabs. By the 5th round, Pereira knew it was time to hit the gas and go all in. A well-timed leg check sparked Poatan's offensive assault. He backed Izzy into a trap and unleashed a barrage of vicious strikes, firing off with machine gun precision. Pereira didn't let up, delivering bomb after bomb until the referee had no choice but to intervene. And just like that, the UFC middleweight division had a new king. For the 3rd time in their rivalry, Alex Pereira left Izzy in the dust. After defeating top contender Jan Blachowicz, Alex Pereira earned his shot at UFC light heavyweight gold, held by the wild and unpredictable Jiří Procházka. When facing Poatan, even the most confident strikers often turn into wrestlers, and that's exactly what Jiří did in the first round. But instead of sticking with that strategy in the second, Procházka decided to trade strikes, and Alex was more than happy to oblige. The Czech fighter pressed forward, but Poatan's firepower proved too much. A desperate takedown attempt was met with a barrage of elbows, forcing the referee to step in and stop the onslaught. And just like that, the UFC light heavyweight division welcomed its new sheriff, as Pereira claimed his new throne. In his first title defense, the Brazilian knockout artist was set to clash with Jamal Hill, a former champion with wins over Johnny Walker, Thiago Santos, and Glover Teixeira. A brief pause occurred when a strike landed in no man's land, but Poatan waved off Herb Dean, signaling he was ready to go back on the hunt. Seconds later, Pereira launched a missile that floored Hill instantly. Though Jamal was still moving, Alex gave him a few percussion lessons before the referee stepped in to save him. Pereira made a former champ look like an amateur, but who could blame Hill? After all, he was standing toe-to-toe with the best striker this division has ever seen. As energetic as a rabbit in a carrot field, Alex Pereira wasted no time getting back into action, stepping into the Octagon just 2 months after his last fight. His opponent, a familiar face, Jiří Procházka, whom Pereira had already bested in November 2023. In the closing seconds of the first round, Pereira's infamous left hook made its appearance, but the Czech warrior was saved by the bell. Yet, entering round 2 against Poatan was far from a rescue. Just 5 seconds into the round, Pereira unleashed a devastating strike, channeling his inner Cro Cop and sealing the deal. With that, the rivalry was settled, and Alex Pereira stood tall as the undisputed light heavyweight king. And then we come to the final question. Who is the superior striker or the undisputed knockout king? Both Mirko Cro Cop and Alex Pereira are widely recognized as the best strikers of their time, each with a highlight reel of jaw-dropping knockouts that have left fans in awe. Comparing the two to decide who is the better striker, however, is quite subjective. They fought in different eras, under different rules, and against different levels of competition. Mirko Cro Cop was a true heavyweight who battled giants during his prime. The kickboxing competition in Cro Cop's era was undeniably fierce, arguably superior to what Alex Pereira faced. While Pereira's most notable kickboxing victories were against Izzy and Artem Vakitov, Cro Cop fought and beat the best kickboxers the world had ever seen, including K1 legends like Jerome Labana, Mike Bernardo, Sam Greco, Peter Ayats, Mark Hunt, and Remy Bonjasky. Alex Pereira's MMA career is looking bright, and some may argue that he has done better in MMA than Cro Cop. But that argument doesn't hold much water yet. Pereira only has a handful of fights and has beaten only a few champions worth mentioning, like Sean Strickland, Izzy, and Jiří Procházka. Cro Cop, on the other hand, although he never claimed the UFC belt, won the Pride Openweight Grand Prix Championship, the most prestigious MMA title of his time. He was in the mix with the greatest heavyweights ever, such as Josh Barnett, Fedor Emelianenko, Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira, Fabricio Verdum, and Alistair Overeem. When it comes to knockouts, Cro Cop's treasury is far richer than Alex's. He fought more often and scored far more KOs across both MMA and kickboxing. If these two had fought during their primes, the fight could have gone either way. In one scenario, Alex Pereira's speed and power could have turned the tide early, landing a vicious left hook on the somewhat heavier-footed Cro Cop. But history tells us that Cro Cop is the king of rematches. He won all of his rematches, and it's likely that he would have found a way to beat Pereira the second time, perhaps by grinding him down in the clinch with elbows and strikes until Pereira got frustrated. That's when Cro Cop would have landed his iconic straight left or a high kick to end the fight. While Pereira has delivered some incredible knockouts, if we must crown the king of knockouts, it has to be Mirko Cro Cop. No other fighter has a highlight reel quite like Cro Cop's. His high kicks from hell sent opponents to the shadow realm in a way that still gives fans chills. And what do you fight fans think about this? Who do you consider the scarier knockout artist of the two? Leave your thoughts in the comments and make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this.